Hey everybody, welcome to the Feeling Lighter podcast. I'm Coach Tyler, this is Dr. Lisa, and we're here today with a special guest, Reba Parker. Thanks for joining us today, Reba.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited today because we're going to talk about peace. And I think this is something that so many of us long for, even if we can't name it, but so many of us struggle to actually create in our own lives. And so maybe the first question I would love to ask you, just to drop right into the deep end of the pool, is what is peace?
Wow. Okay. Well, Tyler, that's a great question. I teach a sociology of peace class. I've been teaching it for 17 years, so we dive into that pretty much every day in class. And students walk in very curious with this same question: what is peace? And if you go to Webster's Dictionary, you're going to see a lot of definitions. I believe those definitions are all true, but they're stagnant and stuck, and we need some new definitions for peace, so that's what I'm here to deliver. So for me personally, and we can get into the academics later, maybe a little bit on the side, but for me personally, peace is when you can say it is well with my soul. Mm-hmm. So regardless of what's going on around the world or in your home, it's that place where you can ask yourself that question and you can say, yes, for this moment, it is well with my soul.
I love that. That is definitely deep in the roots of my upbringing. It is well with my soul.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned that you teach on this, so why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got into this work?
I sure will. Thank you for the question. I've been teaching sociology for over 24 years. I teach at the College of Charleston in South Carolina. Still, I've been there 20 plus years, but I live in Portland, Oregon. So now I'm teaching full-time solely online, but for about 18 years, I was on campus. I also taught at the Citadel, which is one of the oldest military universities in America, and I taught this very course, Sociology of Peace. So students were coming out of classes on strategies of war and stepping into a class on strategies of peace. So that was,
wow.
Yeah, it was a great, great experience. So I'm still teaching full-time online this course, Sociology of Peace. So basically, it's a peace studies class with a sociological lens. I just finished a book called the Peaceability Mindset, and it's allowing my students and now you folks to see peace not just from a sociological angle, but more as a practical steps to peace and to personal well-beingness. So I believe that we need to bring it on in to the personal. And then, of course, we can take it out to larger domains. But what I've found out as a sociologist that peace works. And people don't perceive peace as in that verbiage. What do you mean peace works? My students walk out of my class. First of all, they walk in skeptical, of course. And the reason for that is I believe society has set peace up for failure, not success. So our social institutions, even including our homes, we really don't teach people about peace, what it is and how to move toward it or how to hold it. So if you haven't been taught, it makes sense that my students walk in naive and not understanding. But they walk out believers that peace is not only possible, but it's practical, doable, movable, measurable, tangible, and relevant.
Let's get into that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Reba, tell us, again, somebody cultivates peace in their life. I think there's so many misnomers, like in order to cultivate peace, we have to not take action on things that are important to us, or it means that I'm not caring about these things in my environment, like politics and these things and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just curious, starting out, what are the steps to get us to a sense of peace?
That's a great question. I believe before we can get to the steps, and I would like to cover those, but right before we get to the steps, there's a missing ingredient, and it's this notion of believability. Because if we don't believe that peace is possible, then why take steps?
Good point.
Yeah, so once you believe that peace is possible, game on, and the potentials for the outcomes of peace are unlimited. So the way I help my students understand this is the word that I use is peaceability, which is the ability to do peace. And in order to do peace, you need a mindset that's capable of moving in that direction. I call it the peaceability mindset. But it's changing our perceptions around peace. And once we can begin to do that, then we can begin to take these steps you're talking about, Tyler. So I want to throw this up as a point of reference. When my students step into my class, I give them a survey, and the first question on the survey, I show them a peace sign. And I'm going to ask your audience this same question, okay? If you'll give me permission to, but the question is,
absolutely.
When you see a peace sign, what's the first thing that pops in your head? First thing.
Can I answer?
Hippies.
Yes.
I was just about to say hippies.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've got a question for you two then. If hippies is the first thing you see, how motivated are you to believing in the possibilities of a relevant peace 60 years later? You
Well, I
just
do
gave
want
it-
one of those new microbuses, you know?
Okay, well, those are pretty cool. Hey, you can have both. You can have a practical piece and drive a cool VW.
So
We get your
I will
point.
say, even though that is the first thing I think about, I see actual peace as different than that symbol. So
Yes.
I do still have a lot of believability in it. But that sign is just
Yeah,
naturally,
but see,
it draws
okay.
me to that.
I love your response, because here's the deal. When I ask them the second question, what is peace? A lot of times their answers are different. But the peace sign delivers a very honed in answer. 70% of my students, and I've surveyed thousands of students, 70% bring it back to hippies, 60s or 70s, Woodstock, tie-dye shirts, and VW vans, and even Scooby-Doo, all kinds of things, psychedelic drugs. But it's all honed in that period of time, right? And then about 15% give the answer of calm, harmony, that kind of thing, a yoga. And then about 10% move into that absence of war, or they kind of nestle in that one day we're all going to come together in unity. Well, the absence of war seems impossible to most, even though I don't think it's impossible. The notion of world unity seems far-fetched. So those answers aren't leading us to something tangible. And then harmony and calm is beautiful, but it's very passive. And Tyler, you were bringing up, if it seems kind of soft, how can we use it? So all of those reflections of a peace sign aren't really moving us into spaces of what's going on in the world today and how can we implement peace in practical ways for today. But back to your question, how do we move toward peace? First of all, is peaceability, the ability to do peace, which to me is peace with a growth mindset. Because as long as you have a fixed mindset, and a lot of my students do, they will say, we'll always have war, so there's never going to be peace. We'll never all agree on the same page one day, so we'll never have peace. So they shut it down before they even see the steps toward peace and the outcomes with that. So peaceability mindset is critical.
Reba, before you go to those steps, I'm curious now that you mentioned believability being so important. Like, what are the obstacles to believing that peace is a potential reality?
Okay, I love that question. And by the way, I love Bill's podcast. I just have to say that. No, I'm serious, because I had these takeaways, and today I hope people have the same kind of takeaways. But y'all do a fabulous job, and you've helped me with my perceptions around exercise. And now I don't even call it exercise, I call it movement. Okay.
Well, I know. What a win. Thank you for that.
And that movement is not just to move my body, but it's getting in touch with what my body's trying to tell me. Look, great stuff. And we're all in this together, moving forward. So your question was about believability and what are the roadblocks. I list in my book all kinds of roadblocks to peace, but one of them is that we see peace as soft, and it's not hard power, so we see it as soft. And when we see things that need direct input and they need to really have force, we think peace, put it on the back burner because it's not going to do the job, which is not true. Some of my students and others see peace as frivolous. And so they don't take it serious. So that's another roadblock. Another roadblock is that people don't have a structure to set peace on, and because of that, it seems nebulous, like pie in the sky thinking or something like that. So it's hard to say, let me take this and use it. And then I think, again, our media doesn't talk about tangible, practical peace and the outcomes. And by the way, a lot of good things are happening and they fit under the peace umbrella, but we don't attach it to peace, so peace never gets credit. And so it's not seen as part of the solution. And it is. So those are just a few roadblocks.
How do you overcome the obstacle of that softness, that weakness, right? Because I think that's certainly something that comes up for people. And usually to me, I feel like that's just abandonment of self. We all want peace. We all want love. We all want presence.
Sure.
But like if somebody's like, hey, peace is soft. We got to go out there and do these things, right? To change the world. How do you combat that?
Okay. Well, look at a violent home where the parent is angry and mean. And look at a home that's peaceful where parents sit and listen to their children and respect them. And then look at the outcomes. A violent home, you're going to see kids struggling to function in schools, to relate to their peers, and then they go on and repeat these things. Look at the outcome of a peaceful home, where where yelling is non-existent, and kids can thrive because they're appreciated for who they are instead of beat into a box. So look at the outcomes, but look at Martin Luther King, Gandhi. You know why we remember those folks? Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Desmond Tutu, Dalai Lama. The reason we remember them is because peace works and is powerful. We wouldn't remember them if peace were soft. We remember them because peace is powerful and it worked. And look, Gandhi and Martin Luther King were able to take down powerful governments with peace.
Peace. You know, I'm glad you made the analogy of the houses, the homes, because I think in reference to what you were saying, Tyler, like, what do you do to combat this idea that like peace is passive and soft and weak? And I think that is bringing up Martin Luther King, I think that's a very interesting conversation to have, because I think a lot of the things that he fought for didn't necessarily come peacefully, but the overall message was peace. But in the homes you were talking about, the second home where maybe they're not yelling a lot, there's no violence, you know, it's not angry, but there's still structure. There's still, like, I believe I'm curating a very peaceful home, but there's still structure. There's still rules. There's still tough conversations. There's still boundaries being set. There's still things happening to maintain order, maintain respect, mutual respect, and all of that, but it's still under the umbrella of like peace and prosperity and things being light and good, as opposed to this concept that the only way to rule and manage your house is like with this iron fist where there's yelling and anger and strict discipline. So for me, that was the first thing that really hit home with how this idea and concept of peace doesn't have to be soft and passive and pushovery, but it can still be kind and open and resilient. Like, I know I'm not raising my kids the way I was raised. Like, you know, there was a level of like, shut up, you're a child, do what I say and not what I do. And I'm having these very difficult conversations with my kids.
Did you talk to my dad before this conversation?
No, I know. I grew up with someone like him, I'm sure. But in my home, the conversations are, the kids are asking questions. It's like, why? Why do I need to do that? And, they're questioning authority. And as much as I want to empower them to question authority, I hate that it's me, but that's a part of their practice, so I'm here for it. But I think that's important to note, that home that is peaceful, not in air quotes, that home that is peaceful still maintains structure and order and discipline and things of that nature. It doesn't have to be one or the other,
Yeah, that's good.
That's great. And when you think about it, order brings a sense of calm.
It does.
So you're talking about structure, right? And knowing what the boundaries are, respectful boundaries, they know when they're pushing too far. And some of these other homes that are lean more toward violence, they don't know where those boundaries are, and they don't know when they're getting ready to cross something because it hasn't been laid. So peace brings order, not chaos. Peace brings constructive behavior, not destructive.
I like that.
Yeah, and it brings balance. And our parasympathetic nervous system settles with peace. The opposite of that is the sympathetic, where we're living in fear. And so our body reacts to that. Like example is one of the ways we can move toward a culture of peace in our home is cease yelling. And I have students saying, well, Professor Parker, we're Italians and it's our culture to yell. And I'm like, right? Or whatever the culture might be. And there's plenty that come up, right? But I'm like, is it time to change culture?
Time to shift the narrative a little.
Shift the narrative just a little bit. You can have pride in getting animated, but if yelling raises our cortisol levels. So our biology is telling us something's amiss, but yelling also divides us. It pushes someone away instead of pulling them in, right?
Oh God, that's so true.
And
I may be sitting here silently, but I'm processing all of my childhood right now.
Listen.
And how I parent in return.
Well, it's a learning process, and we're all moving through that. But yelling also, it tends to shame and blame and break down our soul instead of doing the opposite and building us up. So just by ceasing yelling, or begin by bringing it down a notch, that's going to change our child's biology, but it's going to put them in a place that's settled, where they can breathe and just understand what's going on instead of shutting down because they're in flight or fright, right?
Yeah.
And we don't attach that to peace.
No.
But if not usually, but if we did, we could say, oh, you mean if I check off the yelling in my home, our home is going to move toward peace. Now, let me give you an example, but this is what I use in my classes, but the first place I gave it was with my mom. So when I told my mom and father that I was teaching a class called Sociology Peace, that was 17 years ago. I was really excited. My dad was professor, so, I wanted his approval. And my mom is... she's very, let's just say she puts a lot of thought into everything. So I knew it was going to be a hard sell, but I said, look, I'm teaching a course on peace called Sociology of Peace. My mother didn't even pause and said, Reba, that is the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard.
Oh, wow.
And
must
then
have felt supportive.
It stung. And then she said, we'll never have peace until Jesus comes.
Oh, Lord.
So why try? Now, understanding the context of where I came, that makes sense. But I wanted my mother to understand what I was really doing, so I came up with an elevator pitch. I wanted my mother to be on board, so I came back to her and said, okay, here's what I'm teaching the course. And I said, we have a spectrum. We have a culture of peace on one side, a culture of violence on the other, and the space in between. We're either moving toward culture of peace or one of violence. And if I can help my students, if I can teach them steps and practices and skills and tools to help them move this way, isn't that notable? Isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
She still wasn't getting it. But my students were. So I use that with my students. And a culture of peace is not a complicated concept. It's basically, a culture is the values, it's the non-material, material parts of culture that we bring into our spaces. So it's our language, is the way we talk, of course, the words we use, but it's also our traditions and our ideals, and it's also our material objects. But if those are leaning closer this direction than violence, then we're moving in that direction. So I teach in my course nonviolent communication, which is a way to speak nonviolently. And that is a tool that my students take from here on out. And that's just one way. But it's when we talk about peace, it's hard for people to put away these notions that it's pie in the sky, and instead of a vague concept, it's a doable process. And if we can see peace like that, it doesn't mean that we don't value those moments where it is well with my soul. We do. But we're setting up systems and practices where peace, get this, y'all, love this, peace becomes predictable. Because, example, in my home, I live in a very peaceful home. It didn't happen overnight. There's things we do, and when we have conflict, we know how to come back together because we have these tools, and we do speak nonviolently, and we listen empathetically or deep listening. We have these skills of repairing repairing a harm when it's done. So I live in a peaceful home, and our home is peaceful 90+% of the time. So it's predictable.
I like that. For me, it's the home piece that's making it make sense a lot, because what you shared about what your mom said, we'll only have peace when Jesus comes back. And I understand that concept. I grew up, pretty religious, and I understand the sort of the leaning into the thought process that this world is horrible, we're all bad sinners, and everything is going to hell until Jesus comes and saves us. I get where it comes from, but when you really think about it, that is sad. That is sad, and that is...
It takes away your power.
It takes away all your power, and it really makes living very not fun. Like, why would you want to be here in hell? You know what I mean? And I understand things that, happen in our world that are, overwhelming and sad and scary, but we still get some choice and some autonomy in what our world looks like. And I think every time you say home, I go right back to that concept. Like, in my home, what am I curating every single day? What is the majority of what I get to experience and my kids get to experience? And peace is such a big part of how I try to lead and live. And it's been funny because I grew up with a very yelling mother. That's how she communicated. And I started off yelling as a parent because I thought that was how you get your point across. But what I noticed before I even cared about how the kids are impacted is how stressed out it made me. Yeah. I started to notice, like, my heart rate goes up. I feel like I can't catch my breath. I get a headache. And so I stopped yelling for myself initially, but thinking and listening to what you're saying and remembering my childhood and how good it did not feel to be yelled at. And, I know my children have benefited from it, but if we curate this peace in our homes, there's no reason we can't curate peace in the world. And it doesn't mean we all have to agree on every single thing in life. But, most of the concepts of peace, especially with what you're sharing today, they seem like easy yeses. You know what I mean? Like, it's an easy, it's what we really want. So
what you
I
said,
love
Reba,
that.
there was something that hit me was peace brings order not chaos.
Not chaos. Yeah.
Peace brings constructive behavior, not destructive behavior. What a beautiful litmus test for whether or not we're cultivating peace. Are we creating order or chaos? Are we being constructive or destructive? And I think all of us can reflect on that and go, "Ooh, we want more order. We want more constructive conversations and interactions with others. And we want a lot less destructive ones and a lot less chaos, I'm sure." So we've been talking a lot about peace, but let's teach people how to get there.
Yeah.
Let's teach me how to get there, please. I'm interested.
Okay.
You got peace, Tyler.
Sometimes.
Yeah, let's do this. Again, I teach an entire course on this. So what I did...
You got 5 minutes to get us to peace.
I know. So what I'm going... Look, I know how to do this, and I'm going to deliver.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so what I do is I break peace down into a 3-part formula, which is the ingredients to peace. And so basically, memorize these 3 ingredients and work on them, and you're moving in that direction. So the first one, and by the way, these ingredients are tested. We can look at big models like an entire country, or we can look at a community group, or we can look at a home, or even in our individual self, and see if these line up. And if they do, you're going to see outcomes of peace. So the 3 ingredients are safety. Okay, safety, number 1. Number 2, well-being or well-beingness. I love the word well-beingness, so that's what I'm using. And then interconnectedness. So safety is that place. Safety is that place where, we are surviving. Our basic needs are met, and we feel at ease in a place instead of on edge. Okay?
Yeah.
And then, so think about your home, or think about a school, or think about your community. Leaving the door unlocked and you go, "Oh no, I left the door unlocked." Those kind of things. And then you can think on a national level as well. And then well-beingness is, if safety is survival or surviving, well-beingness is thriving.
Thriving, yeah.
So well-being is that place, and you folks teach about this all the time, so I don't need to tell you, but well-being is that place where we can grow as an individual and become the best person that we can be. And for a community, it looks like quality education and available and affordable health care that's preventive, right? So these kind of things build platforms where peace is easy to slide in. It's when you have the opposite of that, where it's not safe neighborhood, and you don't have health care because you can't afford it. And so you put all those things on hold, or you don't go to college or take a course that's going to help develop your practical skills, whatever that might be. You don't have the resources to do that. And then the last part of the ingredients is interconnectedness, because you can have all the safety and well-beingness in the world and you're just doing all good.
By yourself.
By yourself, yes. And that's a private, I see that as a piece that you're seeing peace as a private luxury. And it's in today's world, peace as a luxury is not time for that. It's not time to sit on the fence. So that interconnectedness is that beautiful place, and that's where it slides into transcendence, where you're moving, where we can't do this together, and we're all in it together, and everybody has value, and everybody has a place at the table, where there's a corporation, a home, where your kids have a voice, right? Or whether it's your neighborhood, and there's a partnership instead of a domination model.
Okay, now I'm back to seeing how peace does seem very difficult to access on a global scale.
Okay.
Those things that you pointed out, I agree, and they are so necessary. And I can curate them in myself. I can curate them in my home, and I can probably curate them in my community. It gets really scary when we're talking about the country, the world, because you have to have some people whose interests are not in that shift directions almost in order for that to even be plausible. So that's
you have
scary.
to have the majority of the people shift their values.
True,
towards
the majority
peace,
of the people.
and then those people at the top don't stand a chance.
That's a
when
good point.
Billions of others want
That's
peace.
a good point.
And that's how it works. And there's so much power in that.
It starts
And
here, right?
yes, it does. It starts here, and you've got to have it here. But I tell you what, when you have it here and you're growing in safety, when you're safe and you're in your parasympathetic, guess what? You're creative. When you're in the sympathetic, you're a victim. And you can't create. So when you get safe and you get that creativity and pair it with well-beingness, and then you have a desire to connect that to other people, where my peaceability becomes your peaceability and they begin to cross over, watch out. And I do want to say this, Dr. Lee, Dr. Lee, says this. It sounds impossible and it sounds daunting, and no wonder my students get frustrated around the word peace because they don't think it's ever attainable. But I'm here to tell you something. It's this. There are countries that live in peace most of the time where it's predictable. And there's a study that's been done, and it's a metric system. It's called the Global Peace Index, where we can measure peace globally. And there's the most peaceful countries in the world, and there's the least, and everybody in between, right? And the most peaceful countries, guess what they have? You can walk around feeling safe. People get all their health care needs met, and schools available for every child, quality education, and parental needs are available, and everybody, they appreciate diversity.
Where are these places? No.
But go to Global Peace Index. You will see the countries ranked. The United States right now, out of 163, at the time of this podcast anyway, is about 128. And that is going to fall, by the way.
That's so disappointing.
my
And
God.
just an example, Canada's in the top 15. So we're neighbors, and we could easily, I'm just saying, if you want
No,
to
you're saying a lot.
Yeah.
That's
But
wild.
Iceland is the most peaceful country in the world right now. A lot of the Nordic
I've heard
countries.
that before.
Yeah, Ireland's up there, Switzerland. But even Germany and Japan have moved way up the peace index. Germany has been in the top 15 for quite a while. And it had a history of violence
Right.
and
I would've never
authoritarianism and all those things, and look where it is now. So the fact is, peace is possible and it's doable, and we've got to believe. If not, we're going to stay stagnant, stuck, or start sliding. But we have tools, because if you do these certain indicators, you can move toward peace, according to the Global Peace Index. So
Let me ask you some questions, Reba, because I want to
Yeah.
make this applicable for people, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm gonna walk you through my hypothetical day here, right?
Okay.
I wake up. What? Can you hear me good now? Sorry, give me 1 second.
Something
He just told me I got to
happened.
go back to the question. Can you hear me now, Connor? Is that better? Is that better? Better? Okay, I'll stay on the mic. Yeah. Okay, Reba, I want to ask you a hypothetical question about my hypothetical day, just to really make this actionable for people, because
Yes.
I think that when I hear this, I hear safety. I go, great. I wake up, I do a little meditation, maybe I do some movement, I take a shower, I feel safe. I get to hang out with my kids in the morning, take them to school, I come to work, I do something meaningful. Yes, this is all good. I go home, and my older daughter's picking on my younger daughter. They're both being mean to my wife. And then I walk into an environment and it's, it's not constructive, it's destructive. Then I no longer feel like I have well-being. I still feel safe, but I feel irritated. What's my next step? Because that's the thing. I think we automatically react to these scenarios, and we jump in. Hey, you're being mean to your mom. You're being mean to your sister. Blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, it creates more violence.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
For sure.
So, is the practice noticing as we lose our well-being and our inability to show up in that safety and well-being in this interdependent relationship, and then pausing and making sure that we have inner safety and well-being prior to that interaction, and then having the tools to come back to it? I mean, tell us how to do that.
Okay. Wow, that's I think that happens to most people. That live in healthy homes. That
I'm not
sounds like
talking about yesterday for me, by the way. This is just hypothetical.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's do this. Look, the first thing I would say is, and there's no right answer to this, but I loved what you said about pause. And so when we're reactive, it's really important to pause and take a deep breath and kind of stand back and see what's really going on instead of just jumping into it full steam, because we're not really thinking critically at that point in time. We're reacting. But usually when there's a conflict in the home with, let's say, kids, and it happens all the time, is there's somebody's needs aren't being met and they're not being heard. So they have a need and they feel like people don't either can't hear it or understand it. So pausing, it might be, okay, y'all, we're gonna take a break from this just a minute. You don't want to dismiss it, but maybe sit down with one or the other individually and say, what's going on? What happened today? Get to the root of there's a need that's not being met, and get to the root of that, because it's probably something that's not attached to the conflict they're having right then and there. And then maybe meet with the other and see what's going on, then bring them back together and say, you know what, your sister had a hard day because this is what happened. And this is probably why she reacted to you this way, but we're here together and we're going to figure this out as a team, or something to that nature. So I love the pause. It's important instead of reacting. And then hearing the needs. Something's off. That somebody's needs aren't being met, or something else happened that day, and this is an outcome from that. But you don't want to, well, I don't like the word don't, but let's say this, avoid, push it off as if it's not important. That you want to bring back around and address it because something's going on. So
it sounds like you're saying peace isn't the absence of conflict.
Ooh.
Like we still have conflict in peace, in peaceful homes and peaceful
The way we
scenarios.
react to it.
Respond. That is so true. And a lot of my students in that survey, when I ask them what is peace, they will say the absence of conflict. But as human beings, we'll always have conflict. And really, the conflict many times is how we understand the other, and it helps us to grow and stretch. I like the analogy of conflict. Think of a billiard table with pool ball, and one ball hits the other. What happens? When two balls clash, there's a separation. The clashing is the conflict. The separation is where we are with the other person. And so if we had a hard clash, there's further distance. If we have a minor clash, there's just a small space there. But the question becomes, what do we do with that space? And addressing it is very important instead of walking away and leaving the space there. That's when you have a conflict with your aunt and it happened 15 years ago and you still don't talk and you don't know and you don't know why. It's because you had a clash that was never repaired. So conflict, look, if you repair that, you go, why did we clash? And then you go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was happening to you, or I didn't know that part of you. And then you go, oh, that makes sense. Now you're coming together because you understand what's going on. So conflict can be a beautiful thing. And one of my favorite peace scholars says this, conflict is an opportunity. Don't waste it. John Paul Lederach, Notre Dame. Conflict is an opportunity. It helps us to understand the person we're around because we ask questions.
That's
now,
beautiful.
what happens if you feel that conflict? And so you're able to pause, you're able to drop into your safety and well-being, and you check in with the other person and you say, what is it that's missing? What is it that you're feeling like you need? And they say, I don't know. How do we handle that scenario?
I would, and
asking
again,
for a friend.
Like Tyler's getting personal information.
Look, Tyler, I would be happy to help your friend. And
Offline. Okay.
yeah. But again, I'm just giving you some understanding that I have. These aren't all the exact answers, maybe. I'm not a therapist, but help me with the question again. I'm trying to.
Yeah, so when two people clash into
Yeah.
each other and we're supposed to regulate ourselves and then check in with the other, there's the opportunity for repair and reconnection. But to a certain degree, that requires us both to have the self-awareness that I'm ready to listen to you and you understand why you're feeling this way. But a lot of time, I think, and this isn't just my experience, I was making a joke, I think a lot of us don't know what we need. And so we say, what's going on? Why are you frustrated? What do you need?
Yes.
And a lot of people need even more space or more time. And maybe they don't even have enough self-awareness to cultivate the clarity to say, oh, I need to go hang out with my friends, or I need a break, or I need a nap, or I need to work out, or I need, some food, or whatever it may be. So how do we handle that scenario when that conflict hits and the other person in the conflict isn't able to regulate themselves? They're not ready.
Sure. One thing is, you can say it makes sense to me. You're validating the fact that they can't get there. So that validation lets them know that you're with them and you're hearing them, even though they can't get to those places they would like to get to.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me that it's hard for you to figure out how to get back here. I get it. Another thing, and Thich Nhat Hanh says this a lot, is when in empathetic listening, your goal is to not give them a solution. Your goal is to sit with their suffering. So your I don't want to say your job, but your gift to them is they're struggling and you let them know, I'm here for you. I am here for you. And then you sit and you listen. And you don't give solutions because a lot of times people don't want those. And so that being present in a time of crisis or hardship or suffering is one of the best gifts you can give them at this point in time, and they will remember that. And then if they ask for resources and things, a lot of times we need help. They need help. We need help. And you help them find resources. So those are some of the things.
I love that. Just being with somebody through it, listening and feeling their pain and not offering any advice.
Because you won't have all the answers anyway.
I suck at this, by the way. I just want to be real. This is my active
I am aware.
work. I feel like some days I'm good and some days I'm bad, but that's just part of the process.
It is part, and we're learning. But the thing is, a lot of times when people, and sometimes in my classes we practice empathetic listening, not giving a response. I mean, you can nod and say, so what I hear you saying, without going, well, here's what I would do. But a lot of times when we say, here's what I would do, here's what you should do, we're processing the answer that we want to give them while they're sharing, and we're not sitting in their suffering. We're sitting in our head trying to come up with a cool solution.
Yeah, you want to push them through it and get over it because it's probably uncomfortable for you to sit with.
For you, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, let's get to an answer. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the harder step to just sit with it.
You mentioned nonviolent communication. I feel like what might be useful to end this conversation is offering a framework, because I got to admit, like, communication is something that I didn't grow up learning, and I've worked incredibly hard at communication, at listening. Marshall Rosenberg, right? I've listened to nonviolent communication on many occasions, tried to put it into practice both successfully and unsuccessfully on thousands of occasions. And I think it is really useful. It's like a Mad Lib for how to connect with people again and how to offer, that kindness and compassion for whatever circumstances you're struggling with together. So how can we offer that to them? Give somebody like a simple tool to be able to work through it with.
I appreciate you asking that. The way I see nonviolent communication, it's like a coin. And on one side, you have nonviolent communication. On the other side, you have empathetic listening. Because one, you're communicating, the other, you're listening, and you need both. And then around the coin is understanding. That's what you're getting from it. But nonviolent communication, to me, is the most practical tool. If you want to start moving toward culture of peace, then research, Google, take a course in nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg is a great place to start. All of my students go through his book. The simple steps to nonviolent communication are observation number one, and then finding out what the need is, the need that's not being met, finding the feeling associated with that need, and then making a request. So what's going on, you take a look, and this is non-judgmental. So you're sitting back looking at the scenario with a clear vision and not tainted by your bias the best you can. And then find out what the need is that they have, and a lot of times that's asking them. And then what are feelings are associated. I feel this way because this need's not being met. And then ask them, or they respond with a request. Instead of like, you should do this, the request would be, what can I do to help you move through this? So the word should is really not used in nonviolent communication, or you need to do this. Another way to frame it is, when you're making a request, is help me understand what you might need. I'm curious, how can I help you? Instead of, you should do this. Because that's violent language in the world of nonviolent communication. Yeah.
Wow.
Coming from the other side of it, too, as someone who just feels it all right up front and knows exactly what he needs. You know, the other side of it, and I've used this a million times, and it's changed my ability to connect with my partner, is, hey, I'm wondering if I can share something that came up for me when we went through this situation. And you get permission first, right? And there's, when you said this or did this, it made me feel this.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to do this.
There you go.
Right? It's really simple. And you'd be surprised if you can really stay rooted in safety and well-being while you say that. Of course you love your partner. Of course you want to show up for them. Of course you want to show up to help them get through challenging moments. And so, I've been really grateful for that dialogue, and I appreciate you sharing that framework with our listeners.
And just remember this, I love what you shared, and it works, and you're pulling your partner toward you. Just think of the body language instead of doing this. Just with your language and just being present on the words you chose is doing that, and that's a loving action, and that is peace in action.
Love that. Reba, this has been a very beautiful conversation. Can you please tell our listeners where they can connect with you, find you, support your work, connect with you?
Yeah, sure. The Peaceabilitymindset.com is my website. And I have an Instagram, the Peaceability Mindset, as well. And I have a newsletter that gets out, and I share more tips and tools and practices to move you closer to that culture of peace.
Awesome.
Thank you, Reba. I'm sure we could talk all day long about this, but thanks for bringing our listeners a little bit more to that peaceful mindset.
You betcha. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.